Right now, there's a lot of noise surrounding the Australian property market, with some people predicting property prices to drop and others predicting property prices to rise. So what Ben and I have recently done is we dove into the research and we had a look at what some of the top banks, analysts and economists are predicting between 2025 and 2026 for Australian property prices. Let's dive into it. Now, to kick things off, we'll dive into the forecast, and then later on in the video, we'll give you some reasons why property values could go up over the next few years. But starting off with these forecasts for the major capital cities around the country and the national average, how are things looking?
So have a look at what Domain's saying on their website at the moment. They're expecting about a 4 to 7% increase from today until June 2025, but it's a very, very different story when we start to break it down into Australia's different markets. Now, according to Domain, Perth is looking at an 8 to 10% jump, where Adelaide's sitting at about 7 to 9%, and Brisbane sitting at between 6 and 8% between now and the middle of next year. On top of that, there's some very, very strong forecasts again for Sydney between mark, and then the Gold Coast sitting at about 3 to 6% as well. So much stronger forecast than the doom and gloom that we're hearing all around us at the moment.
Now, once again, KPMG coming out with their forecast for rents and property values to rise. And, you know, one of the interesting things here is rents are expected to continue, but only by about 4 to 5%, which is a lot lower than what we've seen over the recent years. Some of the info coming out from CoreLogic does show that we are starting to see those vacancy rates pull up and that rental growth start to come down. So it looks like they could be accurate there, and those two are in alignment at the moment. But what has KPMG said could happen over the next couple of years with property values?
Yeah, so KPMG is pretty bullish on the market as well, remembering that the 20% we've seen in Perth in the last 12 months isn't a normal market, and they are sort of a once in a blue moon type event. So Perth's expected to grow by about 5.2%, Brisbane's about 5.1%. Melbourne's the little sleeper that we knew would start to come on at some point in the next few years. They're still working out some supply issues at the moment down there with a very, very balanced market, or maybe slightly oversupplied. But KPMG is suggesting that Melbourne could do as much as 6.5% in 2025. Adelaide's looking great at 5.9% and Sydney at 5.3% as well.
Now, to add on to that, a recent article from the Australian Financial Review had one of NAB's top economists come on to throw out his predictions over the next couple of years, which actually, of all of these, were the most bullish as well. They expect Perth to go up by 21% over the next couple of years, followed by Brisbane and Adelaide at 12.2% and 12.3%, and Sydney going up by 8.4% over the next couple of years. Now, the reason this analyst was so bullish on all of these markets around Australia was because they do really expect the interest rates or the cash rate to start dropping towards the end of 2024, if not start of 2025, and for that to continue through until the middle of 2026.
You know, to continue on from there, NAB are expecting rates to potentially get to about 3.1%, as do CBA and Westpac, which is a pretty significant reduction from the 4.35% they're sitting at the moment. Now, what's interesting is, for the first time in a long time, reading the RBA's report this morning, they are actually in writing forecasting rates to go from 4.35% today to about 3.25% by mid-2026. So that isn't the banks and the news outlets forecasting here, that is in writing from the RBA's website as we speak.
Now, when you look at the history of Australian property prices in comparison to changing interest rates, there was a very strong correlation between the interest rates dropping by a full % within a 12-month period, and then the following year, Australian property prices going up on a national level as well. So, you know, using those interest rates declining as a way to forecast where property prices could be heading might be one of the reasons why everybody's so bullish at the moment.
You know, another reason why the likes of KPMG, the Australian Financial Review, and all of the major banks are forecasting strong growth in the next few years is things like the tax cuts or the concessions that are making their way through the market from July 1 this year. So for the first time in a long time, high, middle and lower income earners are all going to experience a really strong tax cut, which is going to result in people's ability to save more money and borrow more money with the banks moving forward as well.
So why that matters, with a reduction in the interest rates and some tax cuts, with Aussie households being able to save a little bit more money, means it will have higher borrowing power as well. And with that higher borrowing power, it will enable people that haven't been able to get into the market the financial capacity to start buying some properties as well. And that leads into the imbalance between supply versus demand. Like right now, from the international immigration, from the net migration, and just the undersupply of available properties, we've seen more demand than we've had supply, which has aided in this property boom that we're experiencing at the moment. So all of these things looked at holistically give us a really strong case as to why property prices should go up in 2025 and 2026.
On top of that, according to Infrastructure Australia, from 2021 to 2026, as part of the Australian government's COVID bailout infrastructure plan, we should see the delivery of about $647 billion worth of projects. Now, obviously this varies from website to website around the net, and it's very, very difficult to get exact numbers, but you can see it in every single capital city and major regional market in Australia, an explosion in jobs, a lack of available labour supply, and massive increases in wages across many industries at the moment as well.
Now, what we're seeing almost across all of Australia is a huge incentive for first home buyers. So the government is helping people out to get into the property market, to purchase or build their first property. And up here in Queensland, they've just doubled the amount that they're going to pay as of July 2024 for first home buyers to actually go out there and build their own property. So you can get up to $30,000 cash from the government to build your first home, which makes it a hell of a lot easier. I know you recently had Clay, the mortgage broker, on the YouTube channel as well. And if you haven't already listened to that video or podcast, go back to it and check it out, because there's a lot of other things changing with the lending space that's going to enable people to gain access to more borrowing power as well. And on top of that, you've got all the LMI bonuses for a lot of the different occupations out there for like accountants, doctors, physiotherapists, etc., where they can put down low deposits and avoid having to pay that LMI.
You know, on top of those things that you just mentioned, Simon, there's some incredible data coming out at the moment around Australia's population growth. In the last few years, I've seen Australia's population go up by over 600,000 people. And according to the ABS, for the next few years, we should see at least another 500 to 600,000 more Australians coming in, which is obviously an incredible cash grab by the government in terms of, you know, offsetting some of that budget and that deficit and that debt we went into during COVID. But also those people need a place to live, jobs to work in, school, amenities and infrastructure. And that is all part of the reason why the Australian government has this monster plan at the moment, which is a private infrastructure boom. And that is to build 1.2 million houses over the next 5 years, which is a significant amount of new housing. But with population going up so fast, it's absolutely necessary right now, especially in states like Brisbane and Perth that are so undersupplied.
And the crazy thing is, the Australian government doesn't expect this to change anytime soon. In fact, by 2046, they expect the Australian population to exceed 34 million people. Now, as of 2024, we're sitting at 25 million people, maybe a little bit more than that. So over the next couple of decades, they expect over 9 million people to move to Australia.
Now, another thing that we're noticing in our business at the moment is a massive improvement in sentiment. That's resulting from a banking perspective in significantly more pre-approvals than we've seen in recent years, which is an early indicator of what's to come, which is more people buying. You've got first-time buyers going into the markets, established people moving, you've got people transitioning around different states in Australia, and as much as 35% of Australia's property buying being done by investors at the moment.
Now, whilst it can be exciting to hear this information and to dive into the data as to what some of Australia's biggest analysts, economists and banks are predicting over the next few years, but at the end of the day, nobody has a crystal ball and no one can actually predict the future. So who knows what's actually to come for the Australian economy and for the Australian property prices. Right now, it's really important to sit down with your own team of advisors, your accountant, your mortgage broker, your financial planner, and really determine whether or not it's the right time for you to look at continuing to invest. So that's why it's important to not jump on the bandwagon and just get out there and buy anything, anywhere. You really need to sit down with your team of advisors, your accountant, your mortgage broker, your financial planner, and your buyer's agent to really determine whether or not it's the right time for you to expand your property portfolio. Either way, we just want the best for you guys and we want to bring you this information when it comes through. I think there's some great opportunity out there, but time will tell.
If you're thinking about buying an investment property in the next 3 to 6 months, then the team and I at Pumped on Property would love to offer you a one-on-one strategy session. To book the session, all you have to do is go to www.pumpedonproperty.com and click that free strategy session button. Now, in the session, we'll talk about exactly where you are right now, where you'd like to be longer term, and educate you deeply on the Australian property market. You can then take that information and go and absolutely smash it on your own, or potentially become one of the small number of clients that we work with each month. Either way, we look forward to continuing to help you build your property portfolio with confidence on your journey to financial freedom.